The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production.
I know I should know the answer to this, Kev, but I don't. You went to see, by the time we get to this episode, it'll be about a week later, won't it? But you went to see Wales versus Montenegro. How did they do?
Wales won.
Wales won.
All of us went. Gemma went, but she really enjoyed it, and she cheered for Montenegro all the way through. Mm-hmm. Being a good English girl that she is.
She did not.
No, she didn't. And we've got our tickets now for the Iceland game in November. 4 of us. So I think,
wow.
Yeah, I'll be getting her a red scarf next, and maybe by the time she's 60, I'll have tattooed a dragon on her. Who knows?
You know now, though, it's when it comes to the home nations, it's absolutely pointless. You guys even really competing anymore, because we are going to win the next World Cup, the next European thing, and because we have now a German manager as the England team manager, Kev.
Well, a very good manager.
A very good manager.
I thought it was a great choice.
Yeah. I'm dusting off my blow up Jules Rimet Cup or whatever, because we are going to win the next World Cup now. I know.
The FujiCast.
It's all over, Kev, for Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland.
It's been over for Scotland and Northern Ireland for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Scotland have a battling team, don't they? I always think.
So I watched that Scotland-Portugal game on, I think, Tuesday night, and that was for 0-0. It was a really good game.
Yeah. Anyway, look, if we do too much more soccer, we'll lose all of our audience outside the UK. So welcome to the FujiCast. You and your questions sent to click@fujicast.co.uk. Some have come nicely swimming in. And also to the Facebook group. Kev, is it still in some sort of tumbly down order, the Facebook questions?
It's in chaos, complete chaos. Yeah. But luckily Neil, our friend Neil, has pulled a nice little spreadsheet together for me.
What?
So I'm going to refer to that and the Facebook posts to
a spreadsheet?
Navigate through this.
A spreadsheet, Kev? What, for Facebook? How does that work? Oh no, don't tell me.
Well, you were included in the emails, Neil. I don't know if
I was.
Decided not to read any of them. There was quite a few of them going back and forth.
I do read them, Kev, but the word spreadsheet probably frightened me off. Plus, I knew you were dealing with it. If it's I've got this new thing in my life that if somebody else is dealing with it, I don't need to stick my nose in. Yeah. I used to think, well, I'll answer that, and maybe I'll throw my 2 penny worth in, because that sort of thing that happens in corporate world. When a mail goes out to lots of people, and everybody has to have some sort of word in it, or some sort of, and I always think, well, if it wasn't to me, really, then just butt out, because they'll deal with it so much better than I will. Isn't that the best policy to have?
100%.
Right, before we start, a mention for our glorious sponsors, PickTime. Pick-time.com is where myself and Kev host galleries for our clients so that they can see the work that we produced for them. So wedding galleries, doesn't have to be exclusive wedding galleries. It can be portraits. You use it for your portrait work, don't you? You can put commercial work on there, and you can sell your wares on there. So not only do your clients look at fabulous galleries that look like websites in themselves, the design is brilliant, but they can also buy product such as prints and frames and albums and anything else that I'm missing, Kev. What else?
I did a family shoot just last week, actually, delivered the images this week, and one of their friends or family, I don't know who it is, purchased the slideshow, the photo film. It was quite nice. Can't recall anyway, any of my wedding clients, friends or family, because my clients get the photo film for free, obviously, part of the package. But I don't think I can recall anybody doing it, buying it, or guest or friend, whatever before.
Yeah, I'm not sure you would I suppose parents would, in terms of wedding photo films, but I'm not sure your guests would. They're more likely to buy a single print, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah. £2,000 a time, according to you.
Yeah, in extreme cases.
That was a brilliant day's sale. Right. Questions then. Do you want to start with Facebook, or are we going with the email? There's some emails nicely coming this week, which is good.
Let's start with an email then.
All right, here we go. The latest one, Richard Griffith. Hello, Neil. Hello, Kev. Greetings from the far north of Scotland. After many years using Nikon, I made the switch to Fujifilm using the X-T5 with a 16-80 and 100-400mm lens. I made the switch mainly due to the weight and impressive 40 megapixels sensor along with the film simulation mode. So I have two questions. I'm now looking for a wide-angle lens and have been looking at the Fujifilm 10-24. What are your thoughts on this lens, as I have read mixed reviews? Possible alternative could be the Sigma 10-18. We'll come to the second question in a moment, but dealing with the first one, I don't know about the Sigma 10-18, but I do know that the 10-24 has been a permanent wide-angle fixture for me ever since I've used the Fujifilm system. And in fact, the 10-24 that I have, Kev, is one of the lenses. I think you had two of them at one stage. And
I did. Yeah,
I did some work for you or something, and you gifted me the 10-24.
Yeah,
and it's fantastic. I love it. I use it for now. I don't use it a lot, but I use it for all the dance floor shots for my wedding work. All of my dance floor stuff, because when you get in close, and I shoot it differently to you, I tend to drag the shutter with flash when I'm doing dance shots later on, not the first dance maybe, but later on, second, third, fourth song onwards. And the 10-24 for that is perfect. I don't know. There's a newer version of it now, isn't there?
There is a version 2 of that, but I mean, it's not that new any longer. No. I think it was one of the first lenses that got a recycle. So
what's the main difference between the two?
I think one of them's weather sealed, maybe a bit lighter, that kind of thing. I don't know.
Not heavy lens.
I don't use it. I just never use that lens. So
can I have your other one then as a spare?
Where it is, I have no idea.
Oh no, it's in the cupboard of doom.
Yeah, I don't know. And I also don't know anything about the Sigma lens. However, I have only heard good things about the Sigma lens. Definitely worth, maybe my advice is take your camera to a camera shop that has both. Ask them if you could spend half hour with both lenses, and most camera shops worth their weight will do that, although admittedly you're in the north of Scotland, so it might be a bit of a journey. You might have to go to Inverness or somewhere.
Oh yeah, no, go to Inverness and go to Ford's. Oh, that's like a mecca in terms of camera stores, walk-in camera stores. The guys and the girls there know everything about everything. It's a very dangerous place for me, Ford's. I have to leave the credit card in the car.
Yeah,
it's a brilliant place. Ford's just outside Inverness. Very good place to go.
There we go.
One thing you might want to ask is about build quality. And I don't know about the Sigma 10-18, but do you remember they were really good Sigma art lenses? Mm-hmm. I used them for when I was shooting with a Canon 5D setup. I think it might have been the 85, and it seemed a very soft build, and I must have dented bits. It didn't stand up as well as my Canon alternatives. I don't know about now, and of course the 10-18, totally different kettle of fish. Probably worth asking though. Just get a second opinion.
Yeah, pop down to Ford's, get your little hands on both of them and see which one works best.
Ford's in the Highlands, that's where you want to go. Second question is, why do Fujifilm not supply a battery charger with their cameras? I don't like using the inbuilt USB charging method, so I've purchased the BCW235 dual battery charger, which I have, which seems to work very well. I have a slightly different one, of course, for mine, but yeah, I don't like. I mean, it obviously saves them a lot of money on accessories, doesn't it? I would have thought.
Well, so I actually know the answer to this, and there was, and it's for very good reasons. It's environmental footprint. Believe it or not, I don't know the actual number, but it's an enormous number. If you put a battery pack in a box with a camera, the box size increases, the shipping size increases, the aeroplane trails footprint increases. And yeah, of course, it does cut their costs, which, hopefully is reflected in the price that they charge. But it's for environmental reasons. And I kind of applaud them for that. I mean, I personally also, I've bought a double charger so I can just charge everything in one go. But when I go away, like I'm away for the next 2 weeks, I won't take a charger with me. I'll just take my USB-C cable, which charges my phone, my camera, and that's all I'll need. So I'm pleased that they do it that way. But yeah, it's for environmental reasons.
Well, that's a very solid reason then. I get that. Yeah. I didn't know that at all. Thank you, Richard, for those Questions? Right, yours, Facebook. Sort out, well, you don't have to sort out the mess of the order. You've got a spreadsheet.
Yeah, but I have to refer to both.
Oh, dear.
But anyway,
Right.
yeah, thanks to Neil for, not you, Neil
Neil
the other
Ford.
Neil.
Yeah, Neil Ford's a much more intelligent one than this Neil.
Yeah, for sorting out the spreadsheet. So, and the latest question, the last question that has been added was 3 days ago from Leo Gift.
Is it a gift of
And
a
he
question?
actually says, "Hi Kev, hi Neil. A question from me, and yes, my actual real name is
Gift.
I have a Fujifilm X-T3, and I'm pretty pleased with the camera. I'm a hobbyist who mostly takes landscape photography. Is it better to invest in and get better lenses, or look at a new camera body for next year?"
Lenses.
Yeah,
Always.
I would say
Always
100%.
glass.
Unless, certainly for landscape stuff, unless you're finding that the sensor on the X-T3, the old 26 megapixel sensor, is not, giving you your print size or whatever for what, which I imagine it's perfectly fine for that. Then I would, lenses are the way forward. You only really need a new camera if the camera you've got doesn't allow you to do the things that the new cameras can do.
I wonder what incarnation of the Fujifilm, how far back you'd have to go with Fujifilm cameras before you don't believe that they could. I mean, do you remember our friend Chris Upton? I think he used I'm sure he was using an XT2 the last time I did some film work with him. Pretty sure. And his landscape work, beautiful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, you go back to, well, it doesn't even matter what brand, does it? It could be the original Canon, whatever they called it, Rebel T1E thing or whatever. If it does what it needs to do, don't change. But you'll always get benefit from lenses. And also lenses tend to hold their price more than camera bodies do. So especially digital camera bodies. So yeah, my advice, and sounds like yours as well, Neil, is think about lenses.
Well, we've just mentioned the 1024, and I've had that for years and years and years and years and years. I think I might have even had that when I was shooting the X Pro 1. It might go back that far, and still using it today. So there's a solid investment. It's outlived all the different cameras that I've bought that I've stuck it onto. I'll raise you a gift with a helps. Look at this for names, Kev. This is Tim Helps. Does he? G'day, Kev. And Neil, guess where he comes from?
Azerbaijan.
Well, not really close at all, no. I've read and experienced myself that when using a Fuji JPEG recipe that has a clarity adjustment, we've dealt with a question like this before, but Tim might not have heard the answer to this. So we're going to help the helps. I've read that when there's a clarity adjustment, that the camera takes much longer to save an image due to internal camera processing requirements. Is the clarity change something important to the recipe? Would any recipe suffer that much with a clarity left at 0, so there's no loss of saving speed? As Kev has made some of his own recipes, I am curious as to whether he finds the clarity is really essential to get a certain look. Cheers, Tim. And he's from Australia, but you guessed that.
Yeah, it can be essential, but only if you're not able to edit it in any way, shape, or form later. So, there's a lot of people who spend time in the Fujifilm recipe world who are purists, and by that I mean they shoot in camera and that is it, and that's absolutely fine. But there's also a lot of people who will take those JPEGs, maybe take them into Lightroom, or even just take them to their phone and edit them on their phone software. In which case you can pop your clarity on there if you so wish. But if you're shooting purely for JPEG in camera, then the clarity can make a big difference. I actually think it makes a wonderful difference. It does slow everything down, which also in itself is quite a good thing sometimes. But there you go. You can edit it later if you have access to such tools to do so, if you wish to. If you don't, then I would, and you're happy to shoot at that slower speed, then I would keep it on. Where it's necessary.
Have you ever used any of the phone editing apps? I'll include Adobe in this.
Yeah, loads. I mean, I use Lightroom on my phone all the time. In fact, I'm one of those people that I take crap loads of pictures on my phone, mostly of things like Wi-Fi codes on the back of boxes and stuff like that. But I about once a week I'll add all of my pictures that I've taken on my phone throughout that week to my Lightroom cloud. and then I'll delete everything else. So it keeps everything clean on my phone.
Yeah.
And all of the ones that I want to keep go up to the cloud, and then they get sucked down onto my desktop computer in the studio.
But you edit them on the phone?
I do sometimes, yeah. Not a lot, I wouldn't say. But yeah, if I just want to send it, if I want to put it on Instagram, or if I want to, I don't know, send it to friends, family, whatever, then yeah, absolutely. There's very little difference in terms of Lightroom on the phone, Lightroom mobile, and Lightroom Classic or CC, in fact, in terms of what you can and can't do in terms of editing.
Yeah. No, it's very
pretty
powerful.
much. With the new update last week, in fact, the Lightroom mobile has now got smart collections as well, which is great. Yeah.
Your presets, you can use your presets on. They will work even with all the clever AI stuff.
Everything works. Everything works. Yeah.
Okay. It's
all good.
Such a powerful tool, that one. Young Thomas is doing GCSE photography this year, which I'm very pleased about, actually, Kev. I thought, because we suggested to him, with everything he wants to do in his life, that when it comes to his GCSEs, think of one thing to do with art. Just something creative as well, alongside all the other clever stuff that you're doing. And he chose photography. But I tell you what, he's taking his own gear into school to edit with, because we all know what it's like as photographers to keep Photoshop and Lightroom and anything else that we use up to date with all its latest updates. And I don't think they've done one at the school for about 3 years by the sound of it. So he edits all his work using Lightroom on a phone. And I don't think the school like it very much, because they don't like any other things being used. Even though you might be sending something through the air, they believe that it's got some sort of I don't know, dragon attached to it or something. So he uses it, and it's very powerful. He loves it. It's a really good bit of software, isn't it, on the phone? So, yeah. Oh, we're flying through these, Kev. Might have to slow down. It's your turn. Facebook.
Okay, this will slow us down because it's quite a large question. And this is from David Queenan. Hi guys, I use an X-T5, and when it was released, Fujifilm issued a list of lenses that were compatible with the new 40 megapixel sensor. Now, before I read the rest of it, what they meant by compatible was could render up to 40 megapixels. All the lenses were compatible with the X-T5, just they didn't get the rendering benefit of the 40 megapixel sensor. You still get 40 megapixel images out of a lens that wasn't on their built for 40 megapixel sensor list. Anyway, that aside, I own two lenses that are not on the list. The original 10-24, okay, he's back, and the 18-135 that I use when traveling as a walkabout lens. So I don't need to carry a bag full of lenses or constantly change them. Isn't it about time Fujifilm started to update these lenses with versions that are capable of resolving the detail of the 40 megapixel sensor? I'm not saying they don't work. Of course they do. But I still have my old X-T3, and the 18-135 definitely performs better on that than it does on an X-T5. Likewise, the 10-24. I know they updated it a few years ago, but as far as I know, all they did was add weather sealing and marked aperture.
There's our answer, Kev.
The answer, yeah. It didn't update the optics. Remember that both these lenses were introduced with the X-T1, which only had a 16 megapixel sensor. I can't put my finger on what's the difference, but the images are just not as clear as they were on the X-T3. Both these lenses have been out for about 10 years now. Why are Fujifilm not keeping the lenses in line with the bodies and sensor developments? P.S. I've heard this flaw, in inverted commas, mentioned by many other users, so I'm not alone with this finding.
He's made me think about something. The 56mm 1.2. This is the thing about lenses, Kev. We were saying lenses, keep your lenses. There's a 56 was updated as well, and I noticed the other day when I was really pixel peeping that my older 56mm, the images aren't quite as crisp as I would have thought they would be. This is using an XH2S, so that's not the 40 megapixel sensor. I don't have the XH2. It's the X. That's a 20. Was it 24 or 26? I'm trying to remember the number.
26.
Or 26 megapixels. But are we in similar territory with this question?
Are you using the new 56mm? Is that what you're saying?
No. It's the old one. Very first one I bought. I still got it.
Possibly, yeah. But I mean, you'd have to properly pixel peep.
Yeah.
But you've just answered David's question, really. A lot of the lenses have been updated. They've just updated the 1655 announced this week, and one of the other lenses, which I can't remember. So they can't just simply update everything with every sensor change. It just wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
You've got to concentrate on building those X100 VIs, haven't they? And presumably they do it based on which lenses sell the most. I guess, no idea if that's true or not. So perhaps the 1024 18-135 are not ones that are high up on their radar for that, or maybe they are and they're doing it. If they did the 1024, that would be the third version of that lens, and none of the others most of the others haven't even got to version 2 yet. So I mean, the brutal answer is, David, they can't just update all the lenses all the time, and it just so happens you use those 2 particular lenses, but plenty of other people don't. And that's just the world we live in, isn't it?
When the new big megapixel X Pro 4 comes out, there'll be a similar thing going on with all those that have, like you. I saw your film the other day. You're lamenting, Kev, that the X Pro 4 isn't out yet on your new film, aren't you?
Well, isn't out? There's nobody's mentioning it. I literally don't know. Might have dropped off the table in Fujifilm Tokyo, table of ideas, who knows?
Hope not.
I hope not too.
Okay, this one is from Alex Cony. Hi Kev, hi Neil. I'm a really big fan of the show. Lots of genuinely useful tips without being too serious, even if I am an OM system user. I've got a few questions, but first off, sorry Neil, I'm going to have to give a massive thanks to Kev, as you're part of the... I don't mind. Most of these are to Kev anyway. I mean, I'm like I was described the other day, Kev, as a tennis player. I cross it to you. I give you a nice little. It's like a trainer. I give you a nice little easy ball, and you smack it down the line. So I don't mind at all. As you're part of the Kev, you're part of the reason I decided to take photography more seriously. It's your fault, Kev, that Alex has got no money now. You shot my brother's wedding at the Swan near Shakespeare's Globe, which inspired me to pick up the camera more. Do you remember Mr. Cony getting married, his brother?
I do actually. Yes, indeed.
What sort of gig was it? Was it good?
Great. Yeah, of course. I wouldn't say anything otherwise now, would I?
Obviously.
But I've shot at the Swan, Shakespeare's Swan, about 3 or 4 times, and actually although it's a difficult place to shoot because the room is quite small and windows only on one side. It's got beautiful views of St Paul's Cathedral and everything. It's a great place.
Well, funnily enough, you passed me a lead only a couple of weeks ago for that venue, and I'm in the consideration pot. But they did talk about that window, and they want to do. Is there enough room to do a great big group shot on that balcony there, looking across the river?
No.
No.
There's not even enough room for me to stand with my belly pointing out.
Oh, right. Okay. I might have to pull off a miracle there then.
I think, no is the answer. I mean, obviously I didn't do anything like that, but I would guess most people would put everybody down on the South Bank and photograph down from the balcony. If you do,
probably what they mean, isn't it? This led me to shoot my sister's wedding and a friend's reception. Oh, he's really caught the bug, Kev. Although looking back, I think my novice editing skills may have given my sister jaundice. I blame the grey March day in the dark magenta ties. Thinking back to my brother's wedding, I probably made the classic mistake of asking you, do you remember a guy coming up to you, Kev, and saying, what camera are you using? Because that was Alex. But back to the podcast questions. I'm about to go on a trek in Nepal and want to take more documentary style photos when hiking and travelling. I tend to just get pictures of the back of people walking or a smiling pose. How would you approach taking more documentary style photos on a hike, particularly with people you don't know so well? If you were limited to 2 lenses, what would you take? Let's deal we'll come to the lenses in a moment, but with people you don't know so well, do you know, having watched, and I'll include that wonderful film that was made about Don McCullin where he was filmed doing street photography in part of India. It might have been Jodhpur, not quite sure. He, even though he didn't speak the local language, so he would simply smile and gesture. A lot of it was about gesturing. And there's a confident gesture. I think people understand this, the language of gesturing, don't they? You know, can you make a picture or not is a very easy thing to gesture. And that seemed to be the way that he approached taking his street portraits. But if you're talking about documentary style,
well, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the truth, the true honest documentary style where there's no intervention, then not even that is really a thing. But it depends what you're trying to take pictures of. If it's portraits, if it's street portraits of people, then yeah, absolutely. The way Don approached it seems like the right way to do it for me. But if you're interested more in environmental storytelling stuff, then it's less about them, really more about where you position yourself. But not that I've ever been to Nepal or India, in fact. But I would, you always have to be 100% cognizant of the local understandings and beliefs, and what's right to photograph and what's not right to photograph. But yeah, I mean, a part of me thinks with that question that he might be referring to other people in his travel group. He doesn't know them, in which case that's just a case of kind of explaining to them, talking to them while you're walking, trekking, etc. This is what you do, this is how you photograph, and just get them used to seeing you with a camera, I guess, in the camps and all of that stuff. But yeah, if it's the locals, if it's the true nature of Nepal, then think more about your positioning and lighting. And if you want to do street portraits, then yeah, you will probably need to get some kind of interaction going. And Don McCullen's idea of pointing at the camera, pointing at the person, and clicking a button seems the right way to do it.
Basic, it's simple, but it works really, really well. I was talking to a photographer, Wolfgang Strassel, who is a German photographer who makes all these wonderful projects about, they're social projects, really. And he made a good point that you don't always have to have people's faces in portraits. And he did this wonderful underground series where he simply photographed the person in front of him on the seat, but it was all about what they were wearing. No head in the shot. It was about what they were wearing, what they were doing with the positioning of their legs, what shoes they were wearing, the way they might be turned to the left. Or it was a really good social documentary set of pictures. So you can think outside that box sometimes, can't you?
Yeah, and there's a wonderful Instagram channel. I can't remember what it's called now, and I don't have the way to search for it, but which is basically the backs of people on the street. Includes their heads, but generally it's just very highly processed, but beautifully processed. Yeah. So an old lady in a red coat and in the rain, or two people walking by, whatever. But always the backs of them, and always full length. It's quite an intriguing Instagram feed. I'll try and dig it out by the time we do the show notes. Alex
Fredriksson, our friend Kev, photographing in Austria. She did that series. It was feet under the seat, wasn't it? Where she photographed people on the train, but only the feet underneath the seat in a train.
That's right. Yeah,
ingenious, because of course it had all its privacy issues in Austria. If you were limited to 2 lenses, what would you take? See, straight away, Kev, I'm thinking 2 light lenses. We've had a conversation this week, and I know I'm quite keen to get hold of the 23 again. The 18, Kev, I know it doesn't seem like it's a whole host of difference, but it is in my mind, in my picture's mind. 23 and 56 have accompanied me on so many journeys to so many places. I currently use the 18 and 56, and the 18 I'm just struggling with a bit at the moment, Kev. Do you remember Multicoloured Swap Shop?
Yeah.
Where they used to, you were allowed to swap anything you like except your brother and sister, I think. And that somebody would come on and say, right, I've got a what sort of stuff did they used to swap? I've got a Subbuteo England football squad. I want to swap it for a Maserati car, full size. Sometimes the swaps wouldn't work, but in this case, I'm thinking, could I swap somebody with a brand new 23 for an 18? What do you think, Kev? Would it work? Or are you going to say no?
Not for me, it wouldn't, but that's because I prefer the 18mm. But absolutely, if it,
is it a good swap, Kev, or is it a bad swap?
Bad swap.
Only because you love the 18 so much, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'd be a boring world if we all liked exactly the same stuff, wouldn't it?
Absolutely right.
So, for me, it would be the 18 and 56. So we can agree on the 56.
Second question is about wedding. There's a few here. There's 3. Second question's about wedding photography. Knowing what you do now and the fact that there are so many good photographers about, would you also take the leap and become a wedding photographer from scratch today? Now, Speaking as somebody who started a wedding photography podcast now, I'll get the plug in, Kev. 1,000 Weddings, available on all good podcast apps. I would. But then I'm continuing with the job of being a wedding photographer, and I'm still in the business. You're not so much now, are you? So your answer is going to be very different.
Interestingly, I had a online session with an American photographer who's thinking about starting out, and that was the entire crux of the, it's like, right, I want to spend an hour on phone with you, Kev, Zoom, to talk about whether now is a realistic good time to set up a wedding photography business.
Right.
And essentially it came down to, a lot of kind of posturing and, telling what happened for me and what was good and bad and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, and I've said this all the way through, I feel like if you work hard and you are committed to it, then yeah, it's absolutely fine.
And you enjoy it. It's something you want to do.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
That seems like, of course,
to do something they don't enjoy.
Well, yes. Yeah, but it seems like, and of course, but the amount of people that do it who I don't think are really married to it. They're only doing it because it is a pretty good genre when it comes to the financial returns to work in.
Yeah, but then they don't work hard at it. So this is my point. Nobody ever, when you're in school and the teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody puts their hands up and says a wedding photographer.
No, I don't believe people do. No.
You become a wedding photographer for a better way of life generally. And, you get people who want that better way of life and are willing to work hard at it. And, that's the hard yards in the business as well as making good pictures. And then you get people who want a better way of life, but actually just think it involves going on a Saturday and spending the rest of the week watching Netflix, and they're the ones that will fall out of love with it very, very quickly, and it just won't work for them. But yeah, absolutely. Going back to the original question, personally, I mean, of course, I've exited now. I've gone out the back door. Well, he's coming in the front door. But yeah, I think ultimately it's the same as anything, isn't it? Work hard there, unless you're lucky enough to have some kind of unique selling point, which is pretty difficult in wedding photography these days. But you can do it. You can make a very good business out of it, I believe, still.
But I think these days more and more photographers do have other strings attached to their bow. Whereas when I was able to just completely concentrate all my attention on wedding photography a few years back, but I found, and it was 2019, Kev, where it started to slow down a bit for me. But having other stuff was probably a good thing. All eggs in one basket, Kev. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and no, again, it depends, doesn't it, on what you do with it, really, ultimately. I mean, I certainly could have survived just by doing wedding photography, but, I did training, I did some family photography and stuff, but I could easily have just done the wedding photography and survived and made a good living out of it. But I chose to kind of shoot less weddings and do a bit more of other stuff. But that, none of this there's no right or wrong answer to this. There's no, if you shoot family stuff or you shoot studio portraiture and you do wedding photography, fine, whatever works. The point is, make it work. If it doesn't work, then something's wrong. And and if you come away on a Saturday night thinking, oh, I really didn't enjoy that, then change the way you're shooting or change the approach or change the way you integrate with the clients, all of that kind of stuff, whatever, but yes, absolutely. Ultimately, I think, there's still people are going to get married. I mean, the bare facts are pretty stark. And that is that, less people are getting married, certainly since COVID as well. And there are more photographers out there, and throw into the mix the content creators now as well. The equilibrium point for supply and demand is lower, which pushes the price point down. You can sidestep that a little bit and become either a high-end wedding photographer or even a low-end wedding photographer and shoot loads of weddings like our friend Jaggy JPEG. But yeah, sticking, the fact is, and it is an absolute fact, there's less demand for wedding photographers and there's more people offering wedding photography. So it's harder. But where do you draw that comparison from? What am I comparing that to? Are we comparing that to when you and I both started, which is, 16, 17, 18, 19 years ago?
20 years ago for me.
Or are we comparing it to, the breakpoint, the natural breakpoint in history, which was COVID? Or in my case, what I'm looking at is a general the general decline in the amount of people who get married in the UK and probably around the world, So generally, less people are getting married. It's easier to coexist, from a lot of people used to get married for tax reasons. And, that luckily, rightly, that kind of thing has gone away. Mostly, it's still a little bit there.
Tax reasons.
Less people are getting married, and that trend is pointing downwards and will continue to point downwards, I would imagine, probably for a whole generation. So, you have to do your research. You have to look at these kind of things. What my biggest advice is that you don't just go, right, well, that's the style that Kev's doing. He seems to be successful.
Yep.
That's how much the people around me are charging. So I'll go with that and, see what happens. That's market research needs to be much more deeper than that. Your research into the business side of things needs to be much deeper than that to be successful. But that doesn't mean you have to do that right at the beginning. This will all come in time. So ultimately, it's more tricky, I think, but certainly, definitely a thing that is good to do.
Right, I've done something called a fact check, because that's all the rage, Kev.
Yeah.
In 2013, this is in England and Wales, okay? So this is registered in England and Wales. There were 240,854 marriages, okay, 2013. I'm going to say 10, 11 years ago, I think my wedding business was at its most successful time. But then I was doing a few things differently as well. So Here we go. 2013, 240,854. By comparison, in 2023, the number of marriages was approximately 246,897. So that's more, Kev, not less.
Yeah, because of as I said, the natural break of COVID, which has pushed them up this couple of years. But if you look at the overall trend from, even if you go back to the 70s or 80s, it's dramatically less.
It says fewer people, it does take in, yes, okay, you're right. The COVID-19 period has bounced some of those numbers. Fewer people getting married compared to previous decades, but it's not right down on the trend. So I'm not sure, at the moment, whether it's as depressive as we think. There are definitely less, but it's not so. I think the thing here that you've hit on is that there are more photographers, and we have a new breed of wedding photographer called the content creator.
There's always been new photographers, though. I mean, I remember when I started, the old school, the old brigade, the grey photographers, the miserable ones were...
That's where we are, Kev, now.
Yeah, exactly. But they were... but I'm trying to spin it, I don't care anymore. I'm trying to spin it in a positive way. But, when we started, it was like, oh, God, there's another photographer. When I began, everybody shot on film and you just use the yellow pages and blah, 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 blah. Miserable old toad. So, I don't want to be that person. But the fact is, there is more photographers out there. But the good thing about that, and there is a good thing, is that it offers diversity. And some of these people are creating amazing, amazing work, which pushes everybody else up for a start, but also means that people see different styles and have different choices.
True,
and that itself expands the marketplace. Back in those days, it was just, turn up, take a picture of the cake cut.
And I also think, Kev, and you'll agree with this, that quality will out. You just need to get your quality in front of people. That's the main thing. Did you hear the boom boom just now come in? That was a message from Neil Ford. He said, I guess you are recording a FujiCast episode, as somebody, Kev, I'm guessing, has updated the question spreadsheet. I'm going to answer his question. You are like a detective. We're recording it now with smiley emoji. There we go. He's like a detective, Kev. He is. He knows stuff. Third question is about posing. I think this will possibly be the last question in the show. And by the way, for those who are patrons, we've got an... Well, Kev, you weren't so convinced, and I think you're right at the moment. Maybe we're a little bit ahead of the curve on this one, but we are going to do it as our Patreon pop-up. ChatGPT versus Google. You surprised me when you said you don't use Google anymore, that you're using ChatGPT.
Very infrequently, yeah.
Yeah.
For certain things, of course, but yeah. very infrequently.
So I've got a few questions for you in that debate. I use ChatGPT, as you know. I use the paid version of it. I don't know whether you do, but I use it because
it's the best 20 quid a month I spend.
Well, our Jack uses it a lot for. He told me there's a particular thing that he uses it for. I can look at his search stuff here because he's logged into mine. For particular maths stuff he does, he's only able to do for this particular thing that he does every single day. I don't understand it looking at it, but it's very clever. And of course, I get to use DALL-E and stuff like that as well through the paid version. So we're both ChatGPT users.
Just before we talk about ChatGPT, have you heard of Stapleford Park Hotel in Leicestershire?
No.
Very high-end wedding venue.
Oh, well, you know me, Kev. I only do the barns.
Yeah, I know.
No, don't be so rude. You
hosted Michael Jackson's party and various other big wedding venue. Anyway, it's literally, I've just got a message up on BBC News. It's gone bust. So if you're getting married there tomorrow.
That's a high-end venue. Well, I do know of it, actually. I'm just looking at it now. I know it.
It's just on the BBC News now, today. A couple who were due to hold their wedding reception at a luxury hotel said they were flabbergasted when emails arrived telling them and their guests that the venue would be going into liquidation.
Good Lord.
Stapleford Park Hotel in Leicestershire has ceased trading with immediate effect and cancelled all its bookings.
And that's on the BBC. I can't see it on the BBC website. I'm probably not looking in the right place. But wow, Kev, wow. Well, there we go. I don't know. What does that say to because there was us saying get high end, and there's you saying it's just gone bust, right? Kev.
Anyway, yes, ChatGPT
versus Google.
I've got a lot of thoughts about that.
So
we'll talk about it in the Patreon pop up before we bring it to the main show,
the masses. Third question. This will be the last one for this show. Third question is about posing. I was listening to Gary Williams. Now, he did the Camden Passage book that you like, we talked about on the show. He was listening to him talk about the best way to improve portraits, outdoor documentary, etc., is to stop people smiling. I often take a camera out when I'm about with family and friends, but get the classic smile and the classic pose. How do you stop that? And what do you do with the day in the life photos? Well, I know you'll have something to say about the day in the life photos. Certainly, if you're doing posing in a classic way, and you don't want the smile and the over the top smile, I've always said to people before I take a portrait, an actual organised portrait, so we'll come back to the candid ones in a moment, I always say look down and then look up. That always, for me, relaxes the face and gets rid of stupid smile. So a good trick, look down. Ladies and gentlemen, look down. Okay, look up. And they look up and they're very natural and boom, that's the one. And then the one after that, they start smiling stupidly. And that seems to work quite well for me. You're going to add a candid version to this.
Yeah, so for the day in the life stuff, I think it's important to just talk to them first and, explain. Mostly they know because they wouldn't have booked you for it. Otherwise, they get it. Yeah. But, sometimes you go and maybe the mum's booked you and the dad's not really aware, or the other, vice versa. And so, when I get there, like I did last week, I get there, just kind of just say, well, this is, just imagine I'm just, someone else in the room, just hanging around. You carry on, do your thing, and I know it'll be tricky at the beginning, but and I converse with them. If they're, I don't know, if they're doing something with the child, I'll say, oh, I remember when my kids did that, and all that kind of stuff, and just get them very, very natural and comfortable with you being there. And then, it's fine. It's
in a classic 2.5 scenario, 2.4, and I'm always very aware of this sort of quoting it this way. But in the classic mum and dad sort of setup, who do you find the hardest in the family when you go in to do one of those days in the life? Is it the mum or is it the dad? Every single time, is it? Yeah. How do you relax?
Always the dad.
How do you relax them? What do you do?
Just chat to them, really. Ask them what they do for a living, talk to them about football, rugby, whatever, What you have to remember is a lot of the clients, my family clients. So, for example, classic example, this client I had last week, I didn't actually know until I got there to come to me because I'd photographed the dad's brother's wedding. It was a wedding I did in France about 6 years ago.
Oh.
And so I was like, so I got there and I said, oh, hey, here I am. Nice to meet you. How did you how did you kind of find me? Was it just web search? And they were like, oh, no, you shot Paddy and Emily's wedding, my brother, in France. And of course, I remembered the bride and groom. And then immediately I was like, oh, so I should remember you, presuming you were there. And then, that kind of breaks down things and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, mostly there are people that I've photographed things for before.
They have some sort of relationship.
Not always, but and they get the idea. They understand. Yeah. If your website's doing the job, and if they've booked you for a day in the life, they know what to expect.
They know what to expect. But
usually, that is the more tricky one to relax. Yeah.
Well, good luck, Alex, with that. He said, my Instagram is at alexander.cony. If you could share, that would be great. It's done. We'll try and put that on the show page as well. That's it for this time. Patreon pop-up, ChatGPT versus Google, which will appear next week for patrons. In the meantime, if you'd like to send in a question, click at fujicast.co.uk is the email address. Please send them in. They've been brilliant questions this week. If you want to do it Facebook style, Kev, how's it done?
Go to Facebook, type in FujiCast to join our very, very, very nice group of 3,700 people now. And there's a thread at the top called Questions for the Show. That's where you pop them. And then Neil will do his magic.
That's what it says on the tin. Not me, the other Neil. The clever one. Yeah, the clever one. That's it, Kev. I'll meet you in the Patreon pop-up next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.